Welcome to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. This is Will Crozier.
And I'm Zac Congonis. We are here to bring you the best solutions to your lifting problems. Through our real-world experience, we hope to break things down in a digestible, applicable, and entertaining way. I need to get a new plant as well.
Just get a fake plant.
Is non-existent.
Everyone keeps telling me to get a fake plant, but I want a real one. I don't want,
You want life
fake
in the room.
oxygen. I want real plants and real oxygen, you know?
Okay, well then don't get the most sensitive friggin' plant on the market like you did.
Well,
Just
I
grow
was
some
thinking about
mold
a cactus.
in the room.
I was thinking
Just grow
about
some
a
mold.
cactus. What about a big cactus?
Cactus can still be pretty difficult in the cold winter weather down there for you.
Yeah, but if that homie can live in the middle of buttfuck nowhere Sahara Desert,
You can
no
do
chance
like
that my bedroom's killing
a
it.
dry Australian native or something. Anyways, let's not go into
A
plants
dry
today.
Australian native.
It's already way too much plant-related information for
Yeah, we're not
one
a
of our
plant
episodes.
podcast.
Yeah, definitely
If
don't.
anyone has any plant insights for
Don't send
Zac
them.
here.
No, don't send them. I don't want it. I don't
Yeah,
want to read it.
I've got a large budget for plants. My budget's $40 is the amount that I'm allowed to spend on my next plant.
That's not too bad. But I've suggested
plant.
a couple of options for you, but you just don't listen.
No more plant chat. We're not allowed.
Okay, sorry.
Well, that was
but-
what I had planned for the next 40 minutes. So what the fuck are we going to talk about?
Well, we can talk about the Great Race.
The Great Race.
We can start off with the Great Race.
Have you done any training yet?
I still haven't run again. I can do plyos again, and I can almost do a full calf raise.
Well, if it's any consolation, I haven't done any running since like 2 years. So I feel like you have an advantage on me already in the fact that you are still somewhat preconditioned to track work.
I just don't see a
running.
world, even if I had one foot tied to one hand, that I wouldn't win. I mean, I saw the RPMs you were putting out on the air bike, and I don't know if you cracked 20.
I don't even know how to measure that. I'm not going to lie, I was actually fucked after that.
That's supreme confidence coming out of somebody who literally can't walk properly at the moment. But I love both your confidence. At least I'm here going there's no way I can't even.
The mediator.
I can't run 100 meters.
100
Who's your
meters
money
is a
on,
long
Will?
way. 100 meters is very far.
Who's your money on?
I think you're both gonna. It's going to be a thing that we build up hype, and then it's just going to be an absolute
massive
disappointment
flop.
all
I'm
around.
probably going to spew at the finish line. I'm not going to lie, because I'm so unfit at the moment. Incredibly unfit.
Well, based on what you're saying and what Zac's saying about he can't even, he's just at calf race territory, I feel it's going to be a really competitive environment that's, race of the century is absolutely going to live up to that name.
Completely tape up my Achilles. I'll just put so much sports tape on it, my Achilles is no longer useful.
My question is, I reckon I'm going to do a bit of a prediction here. Zach's gonna get me from the start, because I know that my starting pace is shocking, but my top end speed and my ability to maintain top end speed, I think is going to be far superior to Zach, and I feel like that's going to give me the advantage, mate. It's 100 meters. It's not 60.
Yeah, but my stride length is twice of yours.
I have pretty long legs. I reckon my legs are probably similar length to yours, to be honest with you.
You're both talking. You're both, Mikki. You're trying to break down starting speed and maximum velocity, as if you're an actually training. You're making it sound like you got full on coaching for this and stuff. Both of you need to make it to the fucking line, as far as I'm concerned. Honestly, it's.
What, to the start line or to the finish line?
Both.
This is two people who just talk a big game, and then once they get in the ring, it's just they're puffed within
Throwing
3 seconds and just haymakers. Yeah,
Mate, I was doing my bike sprints last night. Flying.
Yeah, that's where you've got
right.
me. You've got me on the conditioning at the moment, but I reckon
and general speed and general running technique.
I don't know about running technique, mate. I've seen your fucking running. I've seen your fucking reels. I don't know about running technique, that's for sure.
Right.
But yeah, all right. Well, more details soon to come for the Great Race.
Jeez, this is just going to be.
But I've already
6
put
weeks of banter. Six weeks you've got for you, Zac, to actually do any sort of running, and for Mikki to get a complete base level of fitness so you can actually make the finish line. I don't see this ending well, but I'm gonna I'll ride the hype train.
The hype train.
Yeah, we've got a more details
It'll be
to
entertaining
come.
regardless.
But I've already put a clause in place to avoid.
A clause? What?
Yeah,
Who signed this clause? It's
I've-
like Mickey's fucking 18
I'm putting a
rules.
contract down.
Mickey's drafting up fucking
Clause
legal
1
documents.
is Zac must be a minimum 2 lanes away from me because I know he is 100% going to try and sabotage me. He'll try and trip me or push me or make some kind of stupid comments and jokes. That's
why me and Jack there to uphold a higher
the
standard.
utmost.
Yeah. Trust me. I know the rules of racing.
It's 100 meters too,
It's
nothing
whoever
less.
gets to the other end first.
Well, we're
sure that's
doing
a
a
rule.
10-meter race.
Look, me and Jack we'll stride it out and we'll make it.
It's going to be on a track. Like we're going to like a proper athletics track.
Me and Jack are the
Yeah,
judges
Mickey's
here.
going to try to pull
Leave
some
it
shit,
now.
which is like, oh, no, I run better on the bend. Let's put Zac on the outside and I'll run the inside.
Yeah, I do actually run better on the bend. I'm not going to lie.
Already starting. Just like
I
the
blitz ya.
pre-powerlifting comp. Oh, yeah, my hamstring's a bit niggly at 12 weeks out. It's like, oh, I
Yeah.
run better on the bend. Nah, straight's not
This
my
is like
specialty.
listening to two old guys in the gym argue who used to bench more. You can't argue about how good you used to be.
I've been
I
sequestered
emphasise once
into
again
this.
where
I'm
you
trying
both
to
are
give
at 6
I'm trying to
weeks
give Zac some credit and but he's just throwing hate on hate. So you talk a big game, mate.
That's all you got is talk right now, both of you. So anyway, So how was Easter for you? How was Easter?
No, fuck that guy. Let's get into the topic today. We don't care about Zac's Easter.
How was it? How was it?
It was pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not orthodox.
How much chocolate did you eat?
It's not orthodox Easter yet. So fake Easter was last weekend. Real Easter's coming up.
Okay.
Still not
Okay.
going to do anything for it. So
Yeah,
Did you eat chocolate?
Digestive?
not really.
Get some
Nah,
digestive fat.
I've actually let's go into Zac's health markers at the moment. So I found out that I have psoriasis, which is kind of sad, and apparently it's linked to food things. So now I'm eating even less food, so my feet don't get crusty.
Okay. I don't even know what that is.
I've never heard of psoriasis.
It's like it's a skin condition, like an autoimmune thing. Because like for those who know me, I've always had like really calloused heels, like obnoxiously calloused heels, and apparently.
So does Will.
Yeah, apparently for me it's psoriasis. So I've got to try and figure out some ways to decrease that shit so my heels don't get crusty.
You need to go and get scrubs.
Just say
No, not as in tasty. No. We took a last minute trip down to see my mum who lives around Port Macquarie. It's just a 5-hour trip. So we did a 5-hour round trip over the weekend. So feeling pretty stuffed from that, but still managed to squeeze in a little training session. Only missed one for the week, but in the 2-3 weeks post comp, I usually allow for that sort of flexibility, especially like stuff like family, which I view as important. But for any sort of like training, as long as I'm getting a few in a week and moving through all the range and doing lots of different things and actually enjoying it, I'm not super duper worried about that. But this week is where it changes. This week I've got my my program for the block where there's actually squat, bench, and deadlift. Pretty typical like upper lower type layout. Some higher rep squat, bench, and deadlift work. And when I say higher rep, I mean like 5 to 8 reps, and then a bunch of single leg, single arm movements that kind of don't do too much in a prep. Well, especially me with my last prep where I did next to fucking nothing outside of
you only just
squat,
started
bench, and
benching.
deadlift. Yeah, exactly. So it was like, anybody who's listened to those episodes know that the training was less than ideal, but it was bare minimum of SBD to drive forward skill to come into comp, which is fine, but then also bare minimum of accessories performed as well, which has left me feeling pretty rigid post-comp, which again isn't the end of the world because that's powerlifting. If you're feeling rigid and stiff post-comp, you most likely have done good things, and but I'm certainly at a place where I've got to reverse them. So like now I'm headed into this this quote-unquote off-season phase, less specific phase where, if your hips are tight or you're lacking X range of motion or something's lacking, you need to do something about it. And now's where me and Matt starting to attack all those things. The past few weeks alone of just having like mixed, all I did was like full body supersets, so like RDLs, superset with dumbbell presses and stuff like that. I did 3 supersets of workout, full body. And even just doing that has helped me feel a ton better. So, yeah, now I actually got a little bit more goals and a little bit more direction with it. And I've got 5 months to next comp. We got...
Wait, which have you decided on the next one?
I have. So the original comp that I wanted to do was the Zero Pro, which is local and, you know, is another big kind of best of the best comp, and I really wanted to do that. But our wedding / honeymoon kind of, the timelines don't agree, and I didn't really want to just mix that. It would just be a real difficult timeline to make that happen. So I decided kind of very, very early September, or preferably late August, was my kind of time frame to get a comp in if I wanted to do a comp. Otherwise, I'd have to wait till next year, and I really don't want to do that just in case get a little bit sidetracked or a little bit slack and the fire stops kind of burning and it kind of getting a little bit too much cruise control. So I wanted to get another goal in there to kind of keep things moving forward. So GPC Nationals in Newcastle, which is close to where I grew up, which is great. Kind of fit that bill right at the end of August, and so yeah, roughly 5 months. So I got 2-3 months of this off-season type stuff where I'm trying to work on weaknesses or limitations, things that are holding me back that aren't just SBD skill, and then obviously like 2-3 months of specific skill stuff. So bringing up SBD. Again, hopefully in a much better way than we did last prep.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it gives you a good chunk of time, because I guess with what we wanted to talk through today, it lines up quite well with that phase that you are moving through. Like we'd say, it's probably not a great idea to do comps back to back, especially if you're at a place where you're actually quite strong. Having the time to go and spend and
if you're doing
push
back
some
to
of
back,
these limiting factors.
Yeah, if you're doing back to back, you only got one thing to play with, and that's kind of skill in the lifts. You can absolutely gain muscle. I'm not saying that like during a prep you just absolutely can't gain no muscle, because that's not true whatsoever, and something we can talk about. But you're definitely going to it's going to make it a little bit harder. It's going to hinder that progression in that hypertrophy sense or muscle gain sense a little bit more. It's also going to make it really hard to work on weaknesses or limiters, because you are putting so much effort and time into squat, bench, deadlift. And so like that skill, getting better at squat, bench, deadlift and refining that skill and strengthening that one pattern is all you've got, which is something that can absolutely come up. And I'm not saying you can't.
Well, like if you have a look at like your particular scenario there, like you even mentioned coming into the last pro roll that you were still learning, like you felt like you were learning how to squat and getting the pattern of squatting. So the shorter turnaround in your situation is not necessarily a large detriment, because you can refine that.
I can refine on these skills. I'm confident, if I had 12 weeks and we only had time to do like a prep and a peak, I think I would add numbers for sure. But it's not ideal. Like Zac said, longer time period allows you to go back, work on weaknesses, work on different positions. So like during a prep, that specificity, that getting really good at squat, bench, deadlift, it comes at a cost. And it comes at there's a few different things that kind of take a bit of a back seat that I'm sure everybody's pretty familiar with. Things like if you don't use a range, you tend to lose it. So like, how often do you get overhead during a prep? Like as in like an overhead press or something like that. Not super often, because you're benching so much. You're trying to create a lot of stiffness and rigidity in that position, a lot of tightness in that position, and it kind of like leaves some joints locked up. And that's fine as long as there's a plan to get it back, because otherwise you're going to be the tin man walking around for your whole off season, and then when it comes to prep again, you're driving that same fucking thing, and you lose it even more. So,
and I mean,
what are the common things you see people like during a prep? What's the cost of a prep to you?
Well, like if we start and branch out from that overhead analogy and being the Tin Man, and yes, Mr. Tin Man is generally very, very strong.
He is strong.
Mr. Tin Man normally can't get his biceps to his ears, but on the point of that, it's not necessarily just something like, okay, we need overhead range because overhead range is important. It's more so saying if we're consistently in the same positions, those structures will always cop a beating. and you'll tend to always use those structures for everything that you do. If you can't properly get overhead, then you try to get overhead, you're probably going to use your spine or use other bits and pieces to help achieve that movement. Your body's kind of smart and dumb at the same time. It'll put you into positions at the cost of structure if you can't get there any other way. Because it just says, you want me to do this? I'll do it with the pieces that I have available. And generally,
you have to survive, right?
Yeah,
you have to live.
Once we come out of that prep, it's like, okay, these are the pieces it has available. We probably want to increase which parts can do different things to minimize the burden on certain parts of the body. And if we don't spend the time and say, cool, let's just generally add a little bit more of an ability to move, you're going to consistently just bear down on the compensations or the patterns that you're comfortable with, and eventually that's going to produce something undesirable. It's not always chronic pain, it's not always problems, but it's generally something undesirable if you use something so much that it really starts to crack under the pressure.
Yeah, the overhead thing is interesting, because you'll hear, if you say, I'm spending my season trying to get my ability back to get overhead, some people's argument would be like, but why? You don't need to as a powerlifter. All you need to do is bench. Why not just bench more? And that is a very good argument, actually, because, fair enough. It's not like I'm going like, all right, let's really focus on overhead strength and get you to like extreme levels of strength overhead, like build that capacity and that strength up big time. It's just like, no, but we just got to tick like a minimum box so that it doesn't, like you said, end up beating you up more and causing more problems down the line. So it's like just having enough in there, just getting it back, just getting some muscle length, under load that isn't usually under load when you're only doing like squat, bench, deadlift or really specific programs, and just training those ranges to avoid future complications. So it's kind of like just ticking some of these low barrier things that we don't usually use in a prep and getting those back. So overhead, give us an example. What's your how to get back some overhead range for the Tin Man powerlifter?
Like if we're going just general step by step, the two things
they
that
still want to be a powerlifter. They don't want to. Yeah.
The two things that I'd look at is, one, just start integrating a press that's not purely horizontal, going to some level of an incline that they can still comfortably work through and load. Okay. And then on top of that, just going through some sort of rotation and upward rotation of the scapula. Like just getting the thoracic. Or something. Well, yeah, like you'd use a landmine as that drill to help actually get them quasi overhead. Like personally, I'll just use like an incline dumbbell press and just start to find, okay, this is where you can output load. This is where you have access to. We'll start loading this because we probably want load. If your goal is to be strong, we want exercises that are loadable. You can go down the route of adding, say, things like Z presses or finer drills that help drive the ability to get overhead. But if you still want to be a powerlifter, you only need as much overhead as you need to be a comfortable human. So you're probably not going to go down the route of all like the fucking Y raises and Z presses and all these fine motor drills to help really get the bits and pieces where they need to be, because you're not going to ask them to snatch. But if you put them in a position where those structures are somewhat taxed, you give them the ability to rotate a little bit more, because generally not being able to rotate locks things down in certain positions. You let the thoracic spine rotate, scapulas can generally move more freely. Scapulas that can move more freely generally allow you overhead easier. So those two things, rotation and some sort of quasi-overhead press. And I find that helps the vast majority of people very quickly.
Yeah, I was going to say similar, like some sort of incline press to the level of which incline you can handle without your kind of front delt, AUC jointy type area giving you shit. If it starts to be very yucky and pinchy in there, you've maybe gone a little bit too high too quick. The other stuff I was going to mention is just like general single arm work. So whether that is a press like a landmine or a single arm press variation, or even a single arm pulling variation, a row or pull down or whatever to drive what you said, rotation, can be super useful. And just, again, lengthen some of the musculature that kind of gets locked down from being in a constantly arched position in a squat, bench, deadlift. And then the other one that came to mind for me was just like overhead arm accessories for a real low-hanging fruit as well. So like putting your arm, again, doesn't have to be right overhead. If you can't get there, it can be here, and then doing like a tricep extension or a curl here, and just starting to open up and put those muscles in your arm and at your shoulder through some range that might help open them up. But I think the key here is that one thing where I see people go wrong with this is they know kind of getting overhead or like having some sort of like general range overhead is kind of important for their shoulders not to feel like crap. But as far as they'll go with it is just an unloaded stretch, as in like I'm going to hang out in a dorm frame and do this because my pecs are tight and that's what's limiting my shoulder, or I'm going to lean up against the wall like this. And I'm not saying that they're wrong, because stretching is a way you can get it, but like putting load through those muscles, training to be stronger at longer ranges, and having an input to your brain as far as coordination of that there is it's all a big weird conjoined pieces that come together to give you that range. It's not just like something being tight isn't the sole reason. Like that's not a reason why you can't get overhead. That might be like one of the things you feel, but it's like that's not the reason. There's multiple things in this for you not to get there, or for you to have pain in your shoulder, and you have to kind of do a little bit of all of them and experiment and see what works for you.
Well, we have that piece of as a lot of movement has that requisite of coordination. It's like, cool, you've not tried to go overhead in the last 6 months. Why should you be allowed to go overhead? Like, when was the last time you actually put your arm up there and tried to do something? The first step is probably put your arm there and try and do something. And if that's stretching in the short term, because you haven't actually put your arm above your head in 6 months, okay, then that's probably going to be a great introduction. And then using the load to start to drive some actual adaptations to be able to inhabit that range effectively.
Yeah. So, like, that's one thing I want to clarify. Like, what would you say are signs that you maybe, like, for the person whose argument has always been like, why do anything overhead because I'm a powerlifter and all I need to do is bench? For that person, what would you say would be like the first couple of things that pop up that say maybe it's worth incorporating this stuff, other than like, because I would start to do it before somebody's feeling shit, because I'm trying to avoid it. You know what I mean? But for somebody who is sitting there listening and going like, is this me? You know, like they're already there. Like, what are a couple of things that pop in your head like that?
I've only got one. It's just the only one is benching hurts your shoulders.
Yeah.
Like, if benching doesn't hurt your shoulders and you can bench effectively, and then there's no other part of your life that's impacted by not going overhead, I could not give two flying fucks. But if your bench hurts your shoulders, and your bench accessories hurt your shoulders, and sleeping hurts your shoulders, maybe do something different.
And you're only getting through preps off.
I wouldn't even just say bench though.
Anti-inflammatories.
I'd also just say like squatting, like creating a better quality upper back tightness. Like if your shoulders are healthier and stronger, you have a better ability to create better upper back tightness in general, because they all kind of come into that, right?
The argument to that would be like it's a different position to overhead, but they all are the same if you have a wide enough lens, I would say, without turning this podcast into just a weird fucking biomechanics shit fight, because it just gets absolutely ridiculous at some point. But like if your shoulder can move better through flexion and rotation and stuff, they're similar getting overhead and getting under a barbell for a squat.
But you see those guys that are all the way out on the bloody...
Yeah, me.
Yeah.
You've seen me.
Out super wide, touching the plates, or can't even get that far out there. And like, what would your... I mean, I know you can obviously still maintain upper back tightness and rigidity from that, but I would say a lot of that stems from like poor shoulder health and range and stuff, right?
But it might not necessarily be that as much as if you improve their shoulder range and brought their hands in narrower, if they're squatting heavy enough, that might fuck them up more. Because now there's more rotational forces going through the shoulder when you jam a 400-kilo barbell on top of them.
Yeah. These are just extremes. But like it's the same with somebody who, like, if they're the only way that they can squat because their hips are so just ragged that they have to go to a super duper wide toes out stance to get anywhere, I would probably be trying to do something about that and open up some range so you can... Like, the answer's usually somewhere in the middle. And I don't like people gripping the bar right next to their shoulders, and I also don't like them holding onto the plates on the outside. Somewhere in between where you can have a mix of active, as in you squeezing, and passive, as in like just jamming shit in place. Some mix of those should be the ideal. Same with your stance. How many people have you had say come to us and they go like, this is the only stance I can do though, and it's like super wide or like just super narrow, and they're like, if I go wider my adductors hurt, or if I go narrower my my hip flexors pinch or whatever like that. And it's like, well, look, that's okay. Good justification as to why you've chosen the stance, because I get it. Avoid pain. Good step one, but we should probably work on that. You know what I mean? Like, we should probably do something about it rather than just avoid it. And powerlifters, again, notorious for just like doing a couple little adductor stretches, go, oh, that didn't work. Nah, I'll just do my thing that works then. Even though I think it would be really, really beneficial for you to do something about your shoulder stiffness or do something about your hip stiffness.
Well, one of the things you said to one of my clients the other day on a call was that, like, outside of those 12 weeks of being a powerlifter, you are still a human.
Yeah.
Right? So if you've got that chronic shoulder pain or hip discomfort or anything like that, outside of those 12 weeks, you want to be doing what you can to make sure that as a human, you still live a somewhat comfortable life.
And to go a sidestep off this without going too far, again, I think if more people would get their heads around the concept that generally improving your abilities throughout the body through non-specific, like secondary adaptation routes, as in like if you're single leg work or single arm work or improving your shoulders, mobility and stability in different positions and like all these, conditioning, aerobic capacity, all this different stuff, all these things won't directly, and we've talked about this in other podcasts, but like won't directly carry over to your SBD tomorrow like doing SBD today would. It will absolutely make you better. And all these, it's very proven. Like we're the only sport where we kind of don't do this much, but like to go back to really old periodization terms, your general preparedness will carry over or should lead you into more specific phases where you're trying to bring up skill, in our case, SBD. So like if more people could just get around the fact that this shit will make you better, although you won't see it right now, we would all be better off for it. But obviously people want to be stronger at the end of their 12-week block every 12 weeks. So it's really hard to do that when we're so hyper-focused and fixated on squat, bench, and deadlift numbers.
But what's hard is the people who expect that rate of progression. You only get that strong in such a short period of time out of two things, either massive drug abuse or skill adaptation. Like, you're not getting meaningfully stronger in 4 weeks, but you probably can refine a skill in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, you see those massive increases, and that's why noobs get so much to get the newbie gains, because the first massive chunk of that is just, you've gone from being awful at something to being okay at something. And there's a massive discrepancy in what those two things look like. And that's what people are chasing. Then when they realize, my positions are actually pretty good, they try and change something to get that next flight of, next flight of skill adaptation. But it's already pretty good. And going from pretty good to a little bit better doesn't carry the same jump that they got from previous.
Yeah, and then the next step from that is like, why isn't this working anymore? Maybe I need to do more squat, bench, and deadlift. So you add in extra volume. Maybe it makes you a little bit better again. You get a little bit extra results out of that. Unknowingly, in the back of, without noticing in your program, because you've added in an extra volume there, now you don't have a volume, potentially don't have a volume in other areas, like overhead or like, single arm work or like single leg work or whatever. And then that's when you start to, although your SBD qualities are going up, those other qualities are going down, and you're just digging a slightly deeper and deeper hole, which is still leading you towards a goal. So you could say that's fine, but then, like if we're talking long term, it's something you're going to have to come back to at some stage without living off Voltaren, most likely.
I've got an awful analogy that's completely non-thought out, so we're going to say it straight away.
Is it going to get us cancelled?
It will not. It's a great one. So you imagine your performance. Will's like, here we go. Your performance is like a kiddie pool full of sand.
Yep.
You only have a certain amount of sand. And if you're going to build a sandcastle, you want a nice sturdy base to build upon. What you're doing when you just keep adding more SBD is you're taking sand from the base and piling it on top. So you're slowly scooping out and making this fucked up Burj Khalifa tower thingo that's going taller and taller with a smaller and smaller base. And as you keep doing that, eventually a mild wind comes and you squat 2 centimeters to the left and your Burj Khalifa falls over. Is that the tower? The thing in Dubai?
That's not a bad analogy, Zach. I didn't mind that. I didn't mind that one. Well done.
Success. I already said I needed to do one crawdad, but he gets sandcastle.
Okay.
Castle?
They're related. It's all right.
Close. They both live in sand.
Let's go.
So that's like training variance and variability and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, they're all tied in there. Yeah. It's hard to talk about one thing. It's many things. Yeah. But let's go back to the cost of like a comp prep or cost of like hyperspecificity when done over a long period of time or back-to-back comps and things like that. So you mentioned like, Tin Man not being able to get in certain positions, create force in different positions, being very narrow. What are the other costs of a prep? Like
Next one would be just
usually done.
general,
not always have to be, but yeah.
General aerobic capacity. And I mean, you could probably tie that and health in together quite happily, because heart health and the ability for your heart to pump blood.
Let's just focus
kind of the same thing.
on the aerobic capacity or conditioning or cardio, whatever you want to call it. So, like, why is this a bad thing? Because again, the argument's going to come up from people. Well, guess what, Zach? I only need to do 9 single reps in a day, spread out, at sometimes an hour apart. And that's literally my competition day. So like the base level, like the line that I have to jump as far as aerobic conditioning is concerned is quite low. Like I really don't need to get far for it to start to impact me. Like why should I give a fuck about what you say on that?
Because when we're looking at things that can limit performance, you're looking at the pieces that can be put together to give you more opportunities to work harder and amass more progress. Aerobic capacity, if it's at a solid level, creates the affordances for you to be able to output more work in less time and recover better from that work. And if we're putting it in that context, as soon as you increase the ability for your heart to provide the bits and pieces that it needs to have muscles to work well in good conditions, you're now doing your 5x5 high bar squats in 10 minutes instead of 20 minutes. That time saving can be spent on more work or more sleep, or it can be spent elsewhere better. You're essentially upregulating your ability to do more productive work, and anyone who says that more productive work won't directly carry over to strength gain is a doo-doo head.
Yes.
But it's also not just the ability within that session, but from the recovery between sessions as well, like days,
between
not just
reps, between sets, between sessions, between weeks. Between
That's up.
There's a compounding
interest gain there.
Yeah, there's a compounding level that's going to give you back for sure from having a higher. And there's no detriment. There's literally no detriment other than the amount of time that you have to put in. So I don't want to turn this into a like super pro cardio exercise, but the barrier is quite low. We're not saying, hey, everybody go be endurance athletes, but like, hey, base levels are a good idea. So usually in my experience, just a couple of either 30, 40 minute cardio sessions at a relatively low intensity per week is plenty. If you're a person that finds that particularly fucking boring, like a lot of us and a lot of people listening, no doubt, because powerlifters probably didn't start powerlifting to do cardio. I have a feeling you don't enjoy that if you're a powerlifter. I like to go, okay, like we're going to understand that maybe if we add intensity to cardio, it's maybe going to come with the downside to adding fatigue and potentially impact our training if they're done quite close to each other. But if you're going to do it, if it's increasing the likelihood that you would do it a millionfold, then I'm going to that's the option I'm going to choose. I'm going to accept that negative that comes with it for that positive. So they're the two kind of things that I'll look at when putting it in somebody's program is like, will they actually fucking do it? Like, what can I program for them to give them the most likelihood of them actually fucking doing it? And then B, obviously, like the fatigue impact on the rest of their training, which is actually quite small anyway. But
it's almost nothing.
It might be. Even if usually it looks something like 20 seconds of relatively hard on a bike or something like that, followed by 40 seconds of slow, and doing that for 10 minutes or so. Like in intervals, but not full-on sprint intervals, because it's just, well, you can do that if you want. Just understand the cost. But most people were like, giving them rounds will make them a lot more accountable to it in my eyes, and just make it a little bit more fun. Because if you're sitting there looking at the clock and it says like, you've got 45 minutes to go, you're like, fuck my life. Whereas if it's like, you've got 30 seconds to go until your next 30 seconds. It's just, I don't know, there's something in your brain.
I'm also sitting there going, fuck my life.
Yeah, but there's something in your brain that goes 30 seconds, I can do that. Whereas when you look at 45 minutes, you're like, fuck me. Like, I don't know why. It just is. So I found a lot of powerlifters like that. And understandably, because it is a sport that probably a lot of people don't choose to do cardio.
Cardio.
Especially
People who like
when
cardio probably go and do other sports. Yeah.
especially when the skill set to be able to do cardio and, you know, sit on a bike for 40 minutes and output consistent effort is something that powerlifters for the most part don't really have to deal with. Like we were kind of talking about it before, a lot of the time in powerlifting the intensity is inbuilt to the load. It's like you can't do a heavy double you can't do a heavy double with low effort because you just won't do it. So you have to put in at least the amount of effort needed to shift that load. But if you said to them, hey, here's a 20 kilo dumbbell, do AMRAP, I don't know, sumo deadlift dumbbell thing, as you know, when it's between your thighs, like the booty girls do.
Oh,
Some shit exercise and say, do this as many times as you physically can.
Yeah.
No one will even attempt to do that. Even by the end of it, okay, it's kind of a stupid exercise. And if you do 7,000 repetitions, you're going to get some sort of stimulus. But just the applied effort, a lot of powerlifters don't really have to deal with.
Yes.
Yeah. It's inbuilt. It's inbuilt in the program. To it literally not fail, you're fucking going hard.
You have to go 100%.
I think for a lot of people as well, though, like if they understand why cardio is important, aside from the like, it's good for you, like most people don't understand a lot of the full benefits of, you know, improving your cardiac health in general. And I feel like if a lot of people understood that, they'd be more inclined to actually do it.
And that's probably the metric. Because, like, again, going back to what powerlifters probably start powerlifting to do, is because powerlifting, you've got squat, bench, and deadlift as your numbers, both at competition, but in like 5s and 10s and stuff that we can improve upon consistently, and you can kind of see that number ticking along, and you're like, yay, that's awesome. Whereas the aerobic stuff, like you can still do that, but it's a little like it's
like
harder
for a lot of my guys, it's like measuring things like HRV or just general like resting heart rate, blood pressure, those sorts of metrics. If those numbers are coming down or moving in the direction that you want, then that makes them feel good. Like that's the metric, that's the number on the bar going up. You know what I mean? So I feel like if people, and then obviously they look at themselves in the mirror and their skin's a little less purple or red or blue or whatever shade of color they are due to the state of hypertension that they're in. You know, those are all things that you know, you can track over time and see improvements from. So I think if you can highlight to these guys, like, not just like how do you feel after your recovery or in between your sets, but like, hey, look, this is the data that is actually moving in the direction that you want. Like that could be a good incentive for them to continue to do it. Just like the number going up on the bar, like that is the data that's showing to these guys, hey, like this is working, this is going really well. You're hitting PBs or whatever. They're going to want to continue to do that. So like for me, that's kind of those are some of the things that I find a lot
of people don't give a fuck though, honestly.
Of course, yeah.
They're like, oh,
but they also just don't care about their health in general. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. In powerlifting, like Zac said before, like you can fall down the route of not doing all this stuff and just using drugs to fuel your progression. But there's a downside there too. Big downside.
There's absolutely no downsides. It's just the more drugs you take, the stronger you get. It's like a 1-for-1 ratio. Yeah. But every extra gram, you like cut off a year of your life. Which for some of them, they're like,
a year, mate.
Yeah. I don't know.
10.
Oh, look, if you've taken 20 grams of gear, you're probably going to take off 20 years.
If you take 20 grams, you're going to fucking die tomorrow.
It's an exponential curve.
You are.
Yeah, but knowledge.
Imagine the total. Imagine the total. 50 grams of halo.
There wouldn't be a total.
You wouldn't be able to walk to the platform at that point.
Their head would have exploded after the warm-up squats, mate.
It's just one lift. It's like
going into health stuff.
No, the other quick one I wanted to quickly tack on the cardio there is just and how it can benefit from a progression point of view. Because like I said, a lot of people actually don't care that much about health, even though it is directly related, is one of the big limiting factors to letting that slide is, as Zac said before, like getting a certain amount, like you can get more work done in a shorter period with a shorter turnaround, right? And as you get stronger and stronger and stronger, anybody there who's put 100 kilos on your squat knows that it kind of sucks because like you have to do like more warm-ups and like all your rep work, your 5x5s are heaps heavier and shit like that, and it takes more fucking time because of it. It sucks. And So time, I find for a lot of really strong people, it ends up being a huge limiting factor because it's like, well, my squats take 4 hours, so like how am I meant to do my split squats? And so like it's, right there, the problem is either don't do your other accessories, which again, a lot of people choose that route, but then they end up with other issues as we've discussed, or find a way to make those squats take a little less time, and that improving your aerobic capacity is an absolutely really good tool to make that happen. So like just getting more shit done in less time might not seem like it, but is a huge driver of your results once you get to a certain strength level where you have to do a lot of work to get more. If that makes sense.
100%. Yeah. Just as
And
an
you'll
example
also probably get more out of less work. Like if you put higher intensities into lower loads, you're probably going to get more stimulus than if you put in a piss poor effort. So it's like saying, cool, do you want to get, it's hard to quantify, but X amount more result out of X weight, as opposed to skimping out on the actual training intensity and just doing heavier loads, which in the long run, if you're using load as your major metric for everything, eventually that just slows down to the point that you no longer see the progression. And then you're depressed and sad that your squat's been the same for 3 years.
It is. Yeah.
An example is like Wright Sagor over in Perth.
Did you say Riot?
Right.
Isn't it right?
It's pronounced right, but yeah.
Yeah, right. He, I remember someone telling us that he's like 20 minutes until he gets to his top sets, and his top sets are for squatting, well over 300, 350, 360 kilos.
I've often thought about this because
they call him the Terminator over there. I mean, he's not powerlifting anymore.
Yeah, I think he is.
He's still fucking yoked though.
Yeah, he's a bodybuilder now.
Really, if you think about it, this is probably like laziness. This is probably an aerobic capacity thing at some point. But for a lot of that, really, how much rest do you need between the bar and for a person that squats 360 or 70 as your first one?
Exactly 0 seconds.
How much rest do you need between that and then one more plate on top of that, and then one more plate on top of that, and more because it's 3 or 4 plates for a person that squats 300 is still.
This is not a lot of work.
Still light.
You could just start at that. If you could start your warm-ups at the weight that you're taking breaks at, fucking
I'm not saying
up.
start at that. I'm just saying that, you could absolutely, if you wanted to, probably do the bar, 1 plate, 2 plate, 3 plate, anything under 50%, let's say, of your max, back to back without rest. Yeah. Really.
But really, what a lot of people doing is after they do the bar, then they go and roll around.
Yeah, I often, what I'll do is I'll use the bar or 1 plate to kind of feel out how my hips are feeling, how my knees are feeling like that, and then I'll go and do maybe a little drill and stuff like that. And then the argument could be made with all this stuff that we're saying that maybe if I improved my aerobic capacity, improved my joint range, improved my and improved those, and then that improved just like my general inflammation throughout the body, that sort of stuff, then maybe I wouldn't need to go away and do all this other stuff. And again, it may take less time to get through them. You know what I mean? So all these things flow into each other, all these secondary adaptions flow into each other in ways which you probably haven't even thought of.
And from the perspective as someone who can pretty much just walk into the gym, shake a fart out, and go straight to working weight on everything at the moment, it's fantastic. My last session was I didn't warm up. I maxed out my bazooka deadlift and single arm zerch
that is a warm up
as the warm up before my deadlifts.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'd finished 20 sets of 220 deadlifts and those stupid things in 15 minutes.
You can get away with more, for sure. If you're ticking all these general boxes that we're talking about, or the base of your sandcastle is big,
damn straight.
Get away with way more just unnecessary, skipping warm-ups or skipping whatever particular, you don't have to have a million sets in your program. You can, as you said, get a lot more out of less.
All things that we're actually teaching in our upcoming powerlifting mentorship.
we absolutely will. We'll go
there is a full week on technique for bazooka deadlifts as well. I haven't actually.
Is that a bonus one?
Yeah, wow. This is a bonus week. This will be an extra lecture. I haven't actually ran this past Will yet, but I'm sure he won't be.
I'm down. Yeah, I'm down.
I thought so.
We have the full week on deadlifts.
Additional call.
And then there's
bazooka deadlifts.
And then there's the bazooka deadlifts as an additional
Just there's its own course almost.
It is hosted on my OnlyFans though, so it's kind of, you're going to have to sign up for that.
Okay.
Nah, surely, come on, man. We get exclusive access.
Investing in the mentorship, and then they have to tagline. What
Zach's
would your
OnlyFans.
OnlyFans be if you were to have an OnlyFans?
It'd be the Crawdaddy. That's what it would be. Unequivocally, it would be the Crawdaddy.
Oh god.
Well, let's
What was the next?
let's loop back to right back to the start before we got to like comp comes at a specific comp specificity comes at a cost and all those different things and all these secondary adaptions and stuff like that, things that we miss out on in prep, and go to something that ties into these and like I said earlier, which is kind of the layout of periodization. And I know that you've been going hard down this train with some of your posts and that lately, Zach, but on just different models of periodization and maybe some misconceptions within powerlifting, and then I'll try and play devil's advocate and argue for the old school approach. But
argue for Mother Russia.
I'll try. But hit us. What are your thoughts with this general periodization? So,
as of not so recently, the more that I've looked into it, I think the less important or the less a mindset we should have on block periodization for a lot of people. As Will probably play devil's advocate, it's still super useful in almost every circumstance. But I think shifting to somewhat of an approach that's just focused on emphasizing and de-emphasizing certain attributes and always having them in the program to some extent will lend a lot more success for a broader category of people. Like, for a little bit of background on periodization as a whole, almost all of the periodization stuff that we currently use is from Mother Russia. Tam, please play the theme song. Not the national anthem, fuck. And a lot of it was honestly just worked around the fact that in winter, all of the athletes were depressed, so they waved training down because they were all vitamin D deficient and snowed in for fucking 4 months of the year. Mm-hmm. So a lot of this literature and a lot of this stuff comes out of a place where, hey, the environment forced a lot of these changes to have to happen. Whereas now, if people are living in, the beautiful Gold Coast, and the only issue that you got when your driveway floods every so often, you have a lot more. Yeah, Will's never floods because they're on top of a hill, but you have the ability to have a lot more of a balanced training approach throughout the year, where you can say, "Cool, it's more like gently turning up, not turning up knobs on like a mixer table or a what do you call it? They say, well, like turning the dial of a radio." You're slowly dialing one thing up as one thing comes down, but you never completely take something out. It's not like we say, cool, we do hypertrophy block, you do not do any deadlift, you only do leg press for 6 months. That is it. It's more so, okay, how about we preserve skill to some end, but give something else the limelight, whilst never taking something out completely.
I feel like that's how most people train, even if they are blocked, though. Like, even if you are blocked, it's like even if you go like, this is my hypertrophy block, like it rarely is exclusively that. Like these adaptations, they come together. Like if you get bigger, you're probably going to get stronger. If you get stronger, you're probably going to get bigger, and vice versa. But like having just a more planned out thought process as to all these things. Because like I said before, in all of that little ramble that we had about comp prep and about things that you end up missing, you can see why it happens. Like you can, it's not like somebody's coming in writing a program and going like, "Do we need, leg press or like quad hypertrophy?" No, fuck that, scrap that, don't need it. Like most of the time, when we're not purposely putting things aside, it's that we're looking at like the goal. Like I'm going to get the comp, and so like you put in all your work towards that, and then you kind of slot in other stuff, kind of where it. Just kind of like a real like secondary like thought to it. Like you're just like, just throw in a little bit of stuff that I enjoy on the end and not really give it the attention it deserves. Whereas if you look at them all as an adaptation that you chase, maybe some with a little higher of importance and stuff like that. But if you look at it as a more important, it can be a little bit easier to work out ways to emphasize this and actually get out this adaptation as a primary goal, but then still have enough in the tank to get this and to get that actually happening. Whereas most people, like a lot of powerlifters, thoughts on, effort on single leg training is dismal, and because they just put so much effort into their squat. And maybe their workout looks like squat, and then 5 sets of squats, a few sets of deadlift or a close deadlift variation, and then at the end you've got a couple of leg curls and lunges. guess how heavy those lunges are? Like fucking body weight. Like you are ruined by that point, and it's a real afterthought, like I said, for the way a lot of people program. And you'll get stronger in squat, bench, and deadlift, and the program might be deemed a success out of it. But like I said, you can do it better. You can lay things out in a better way, so you can actually get something out of your single leg work, as opposed to just like chuck them in as body weight at the end, which is really just a waste of time in my eyes.
And even looking at slightly less traditional organizations of a program to achieve that. Like, I've had a lot of people recently who've had, say, I've consistently seen their Saturday sessions always, like, head and shoulders above the fucking best session of the week, whatever reason. They get a route the night before, they got to sleep in. It's just Saturday's the man. So guess what I'm jamming on every Saturday? All the hard shit. So if they can do their heavy squats and deadlift on a Saturday, and then maybe their Wednesday's just the accessories.
Yeah.
Stuff like that can help pull extra effort out of those pieces. It doesn't always have to be squat day has heavy squats, deadlift day has heavy deadlifts. There's so much more freedom in how you can organize these training cycles and blocks that you can make use of the individual quirks and the schedule of the person, and that just comes down to good coaching and programming.
Yeah. The one caveat that I would say with this is that, like, sometimes blocks just help organize people better. Like, if you're a coach and or you're a self-taught lifter or whatever, you put yourself through a program, like, it can be really helpful from an organizational standpoint to have some overall themes of what you're trying to achieve. Like, and I'm not saying that you're not doing that. You're just kind of having a list of importance, I guess, of like order of priority, I guess, and still like making sure that each of them gets something and get an outcome. Whereas like when you have this block model or whatever, and you go, it's a hypertrophy block, like all you're worried about is that, and then that other stuff might get in there if they're lucky. You know what I mean? Like, so it's
the same thing at the end of the day. It's like both of them are working off a list of priorities. One list is just much shorter than the other.
Yeah.
That's the only difference. It's like my list of priorities has, like, at some point on my list, there's just a direct line that says fucking stupid shit.
Yeah.
And that gets priority in some sessions. Where if your priorities are only muscle mass and strength, it's really easy to bounce those two things out.
Yeah, and then you're probably missing out on all of this. So there's more pieces. So you're saying maybe the list should be slightly longer, you know, like 5-10 things, maybe, you know, the aerobic capacity or whatever, some other stuff like that. So maybe some of the stuff that we missed during in squat bench deadlift, so like a drill to train internal rotation of the hip or whatever, you know, chuck that in there and then if a person is lacking that, we can.
Well, not so much that the list needs to be longer, but as the year progresses, the list has to change. Yep. Like, you have to be adding and removing things from that list. And that depends on the actual goals of the person. Like, if the only goal they have is to be as good as a powerlifter as possible, sometimes you're forcing things onto that list. And they may not be excited about it, but hey, we have a duty of care as a coach to try not to break them. And if we see the train going for the edge of the cliff, you should probably try and switch the tracks. Even if the person's like, no, bro, I won't keep going straight. It's like, no, maybe add this in. Yeah. But on that same token, you're not obliged to put anything on that list. You could just do bench for every session for 2 years if you really wanted to. You'd get great at bench, but probably something bad's going to happen.
Yeah. Like I said, you miss out on all that secondary stuff or
then you got chicken legs.
Even further stuff. Yeah. Yeah, there's consequences. There's pros and cons to it all. There's pros and cons to everything. You got to balance it out, and I do like it. I appreciate. Like, I think that is a much more sound view that is going to get you results for much longer if you can learn to think like that, as opposed to just very simply just having hypertrophy block, strength block, and then you just rotate between them for sure. But it's. I guess the reason you don't see it as much is because it's harder. It's harder. It involves more thought. And people are just like, too hard. Like, let's just.
And especially when the degree of improvement probably isn't massive. Like, if you put together like
it is massive. It's long term, I think.
Oh yeah, like in the short term, it's not huge. Over the course of 20 years, okay, it can be a vastly different outcome. But which coach has a client for 20 years? A lot of them think, okay, I've got him for maybe 2 years, and in those 2 years, that approach can probably work super fucking well and just blocking things out and being super structured. But then eventually that person moves on, or they stop lifting, or like people who don't have that long-term mindset, it's apparent in how they do work. Whereas if someone's like, hey, look, I understand that I might not have this person forever, but I really want to set them up for success, then hopefully the next coach they go to has that same mindset. And if a lot of coaches have that same mindset and that same ability, you have perpetually yoked people instead of like one-hit wonders who just
it's tough.
implode.
It's tough because the whole industry is based on quick results and false promises. Like, you're ruining a lot of people's business model right here, which is just either, fat loss challenge, starve people to death. They're gone in 10 weeks, doesn't matter, it's all good. I got good results. Or
I've got the
strength challenge. I'm just going to blast this person with as much squat bench as possible so they get really good at that. After that, they're off. I get their PBs, then they're off my hands. See you later. Awesome. That's...
Yeah, it is difficult. It is very difficult. And I doubt that one monologue will really change many people's minds. But if you listen and you're like, oh, hey, maybe I can put in like an extra 10 minutes into this person's program to make sure that they don't have perpetual hip pain. Like, maybe do that. It might be nice. And the person might be grateful.
And if you're interested in becoming that coach, this is where the plug comes in, Mikki. If you're interested in becoming that coach and getting people long-term gains and helping them feel better and hitting many attributes for over a long period of time and having clients for 5 years rather than 10 weeks, then you can sign to our Nexus Powerlifting mentorship and become a better coach to achieve.
I feel like
all
my
that.
plug was a little bit better, but...
What?
I mean, I definitely greased up the segue to that one. So I think I like Will's better.
Lubed it up.
Yeah. All right, let's leave that there. I think it's a good one. But we could have went, I feel like, in so many more tangents than what we did.
To touch on like hypertension stuff and that blood pressure and just general health, we actually are having another guest come on.
We have a few guests coming up. We have, we've announced them all for... Yeah.
We haven't announced. We've only announced Alex Viata as one of our guest presenters in the mentorship. We haven't announced the other two yet, but we can announce them now if you like. Exclusive.
Yeah, so they'll be coming up on the podcast soon. So whether we announce it now or whatever, you're going to find out. But we will be having in a couple of weeks' time Annie Short coming on the podcast. Which for anybody who's been in the powerlifting scene for a while will know her as a powerlifter. She was a great powerlifter and
10 years experience,
right at the top of many record books and wins on big platforms. So great powerlifter. But now these days she does content writing and just copy for a lot of fitness. Started there. I know she's branching into other domains now, but really focused on content creation.
She was doing a lot for Australian strength coach Sebastian Oreb, so obviously leading marketing there, knows how to do it.
Knows a thing or two about that, so she's going to come on and discuss and talk about a little bit about content creation, which I'm sure will be great. And then what you're alluding to was Luke Lehman's. So we've already done a short YouTube video with him before on hypertension, but we're going to get him to go a little bit deeper for us in the mentorship coming up as a guest presenter, and he'll be again on the podcast at some point soon, in the talking about that and
he's just a character in general.
The negatives
Luke.
Associated with that. Yeah,
I feel like that podcast is going to go a million different ways because Luke is just a character.
That's how we like it. It's what we do. We're not a fan of concise information. We want it.
It needs to be convoluted so the people who receive it have earned it.
Okay.
Smash it everywhere.
You got to earn your education because we just talk in circles.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you're interested in the mentorship and anything we've just spoken about there, obviously look up those people, Alex Viata, Annie Short, and Luke Lehman. They'll be coming on very soon, but we also have a lot of other guest presenters already on there.
And us, the main faces.
And Will and Zac. That mentorship is commencing on the 19th of June, and you can find out some more information.
Booking call me.
Close.
Come chat with me. Everybody who's like looking to sign up, come chat with me. I'll look forward to it.
Yeah, you like to have a chat, but you don't have to chat with Will.
You don't have to, but I would like to.
Every Wednesday night, Will sits by his phone waiting for people to call him. That's it.
No, please book it.
It's like an open line. It's just Will's mobile phone number on the website, and if you can't find it, message me and I'll send it to you. Then you can call him whenever, at any time of the day.
Good. I don't answer, but
He doesn't answer. Actually, he never answers.
Can we end this on a story? Just a great story. Remember when you and Anthony were picking me up from the airport, and you contacted me on every social media except my phone? And Will was like, "Why didn't you pick up?" He's called me on fucking like WhatsApp, on Instagram, on Facebook Messenger, but he didn't send me a text.
Yeah, well, I mean, just, it's a dated platform. Right? Get with the times, mate.
Yes, there's many stories of Will not answering his phone or text
There's too
messages.
many friggin' inboxes. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
I hate
but
it.
your text messages should be like the first, like
No,
an
they've
actual
gone to
notice.
last.
They're the most important. Like if someone texts me, I'm on it straight
How
away.
are they most important? Most of the time, it's some fucking telemarketer trying to sell me shit.
That is true. Yeah, I get a lot of telemarketer texts and emails, and
It's the least important because
Calls, yeah.
there's this over 50% chance it's going to be one of those guys. So like, I don't want to listen to it.
yeah.
I don't want to risk it.
It's not worth it.
If I need to urgently get a hold of people now, like I call Zac or Jordan, or I straight call people, because they should have my phone number saved in their phone.
I have it blocked.
Excellent.
I have Mikki on silent.
Do not disturb. Cool. All right, let's go.
All right.
Red hot. Thank you for listening to Nexus Unloaded. Be sure to jump on our website to find details on everything mentioned on today's podcast, plus information on our coaching, mentoring, and gym services. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at NexusPerformance.Aus for any updates on what we are currently doing. See you all in the next episode.